Hello and welcome to Newsclick. We've just seen a week of shocking violence in the United States with police shootings of black men in Louisiana and Minnesota, and then the attack by a lone gunman on police officers during a peaceful demonstration in Dallas organized by the Black Lives Matter movement. Newsclick is privileged to speak with James Carnes-Early, a well-known writer, educator, former director of cultural heritage policy at the Smithsonian Institution, who is also on the board of the Institute for Policy Studies. James, welcome to Newsclick. The killings just don't seem to stop. You see complete impunity of guilty police officers who are sent on routine administrative leave. The president issues his usual statements on racial sort of disparities, problems with the criminal justice system. Why have things come to such a pass in the United States?
Well, first and foremost, I think it's important to have a historical context that what we are seeing is a kind of U.S. ethos that dates back to the time of the development of this republic as a capitalist republic. Off of the minds and the bodies of enslaved Africans. The Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, is a direct result of the slave patrols that were intended to keep enslaved Africans from rebelling. So notwithstanding great progress that has been made since the founding of this republic, what we are seeing is a continuation of that cultural mindset of official violence, and the perpetrators of official violence are seen as more important citizens than are the most marginalized in the history of this country. And so there is frustration on the part of a newer generation of young adults who pick up the slogan, "Just can't take it no more." And they are uniting forces across racial lines, particularly with other young adult millennials in white and Latino and other communities who are joining them. This is also tied to, I think, the fact that we are seeing across the world a frustration with the reign of bourgeois liberal or neoliberal politics and governance in which the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, including a declining middle class. And that is now finally catching up here in the U.S. Donald Trump, for example, a racist, fascist, sexist, misogynist candidate, is not leading these fears. He's tapping into the fears and the anxieties of a large social sector.
We've seen in the papers today the enduring image of this woman who's being sort of approached by sort of militarized policemen who look like they sort of in a militarized environment, and she's just standing there just moments before she was arrested. And I want you to sort of reflect upon what this means, this new tactics that police are using, which blurs the boundary between warfare and civil police.
Indeed, we have seen a militarization of the police, and we have seen the police develop into a official authorities of use of violence and to sort of a class unto themselves. In which the stop and frisking of ordinary citizens and the court penalties have been used to buffer the coffers of police departments by the confiscation of houses and boats and planes. And this taxing of ordinary citizens for simple violations as a bad headlight. And so the use of this robot to bomb the individual who killed those policemen in Dallas is really a tick up in the use of official violence. We've had complaints over the last year of the militarized way in which the police have interacted with ordinary citizens. And there is a debate now emerging. But another factor must be kept in mind, that the militarization of the police at the domestic level in the United States is also connected to the history of the United States military, training not only the military in other countries in this hemisphere and on the continent of Africa, for example, but also training large numbers of police over the last 25, 30 years around the world. So we're beginning to see an intersection of domestic use of official violence with international use of official violence.
To an earlier point that you made on Facebook, where you had a post responding to the current crisis, where you said what's required from movements like Black Lives Matters is a resolute stance and an agenda for transformative change, not just improving the criminal justice system, for example. What does this entail in terms of when you talk about a transformative change?
First and foremost, it is important to recognize that Black Lives Matter movement was started by three women, two of them who are queer or transgendered, forgive my ignorance for the distinctions in the terminology, who are looking for and improved social relationships, not only between Black and white citizens, but within the progressive movement itself, in which gender and gender identities have been marginalized and discriminated against historically. And so we would be remiss simply to see this as an anti-police violence, and we certainly would be inaccurate to see it as anti-police. Black Lives Matter does not call for violence against the police, but they call for respectful relationships between the police, legal relationships for the police, away from these murders that we've seen on the part of police of Black people.
And to sort of conclude, I want you to put this growing movement, which you've said is also making links with the progressive Latino community, I'm assuming with progressive trade unions, for example. But I want you to put this in the context of the US going into elections.
It is indeed challenging because we have two widely unpopular candidates. Hillary Clinton is not trusted by a significant portion of the voting population in the United States. Her policies and those of her husband during his 8 years in office led to the undermining of the welfare state, which had direct negative consequences. So our choices are very difficult, and this intense moment with regard to racism. This is not about race or simple race relations. It is about structural racism. Puts us in an uneasy position again of having to choose the lesser of two evils. The campaign for a permanent revolution, his term, by the Democratic Socialist Bernie Sanders, has been a resonant point for the humanistic views and aspirations of millions of young adults, both Black, white, Latino, Asian Pacific American, queer, transgendered. The new world is emerging around the notion of a more active citizenship. And they are uncertain in many instances of how to approach this election. There is wide disrespect and rejection of Donald Trump, and much unease with the candidacy of Hillary Clinton. And so hard decisions will have to be made within a few months as to how those of us who are disappointed with both candidates make a decision about who will sit in the White House. With regard to race relations, are basically turning on the issue of calling for a national conversation about race. Again, what we need is a national conversation about racism as it affects the social relations of production that leads to such inequality within the Black community, and as the social relations of racism go across the class divide in Black and Brown communities. So it is a moment of decision which has captured the attention of the entire world. The recent violence around racism and policing has led a number of countries like the Bahamas and others to issue warnings to their citizens about visiting the United States. And so what is going on in the United States is having a rippling effect across the world about the nature of these upcoming elections.
Thank you very much, James, for not just laying out the historical context that informs the current cycle of violence, but also elaborating the agenda for the progressive movement. We hope to come back to you, especially in the light of the upcoming U.S. Presidential elections. Thank you once again.
Thank you. I look forward to it. Have a good day.